The doctors delivered a diagnosis that shattered everything he thought he knew about his life. He had never been able to father children. The three beloved children, not his. Pain and doubt gnawed at him from within, but the worst was yet to come. Who had betrayed him? How long had the lie endured? And what do you do when the truth destroys not only trust, but the entire life you've built? Every glance, every memory, every word turned into a splinter. In a world where everything familiar was exposed as an illusion, he faced a choice: seek revenge or let go, destroy or start anew. The price of truth was higher than he could have ever imagined, but so was the freedom it brought. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. Benjamin Carter had always seen himself as a man blessed by circumstance. He'd spent 20 fulfilling years married to Lena, raised 3 spirited children whose laughter echoed through their home, and built a successful web development company from the ground up. His existence was grounded, defined more by quiet contentment than by luxury or extravagance. Everything he had earned through resolve and consistent hard work. So when his company rolled out a full-scale health screening program for its employees, Benjamin didn't think twice before signing up. It seemed like just another box to tick, nothing concerning. His health had always been dependable. The procedures were routine: blood tests, imaging, a few exercises under observation. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until one of the physicians, after analyzing the data, recommended a more specific test related to reproductive health. The suggestion struck Benjamin as unusual, but he agreed without resistance. He trusted the medical team. Besides, the subject of fertility had never been a concern. He was the father of 3, after all. They were each unique, but he'd never doubted for a second that they were his biological children. When the specialist called him in to discuss the results, Benjamin walked into the office with an easy smile, completely unaware that his life was about to be turned upside down. The doctor calmly explained that Benjamin suffered from a genetic condition that had left him infertile since birth. He had never been capable of fathering children. The words were couched in clinical language, but the meaning came through loud and clear. Benjamin sat motionless, eyes fixed on the medical file in front of him, as if staring at the pages might somehow alter what they revealed. He left the clinic dazed, drifting through the city streets with no destination, overwhelmed and disoriented. His thoughts were tangled, impossible to untangle. The man he had believed himself to be no longer made sense. His head pounded, his chest tightened, and somewhere deep in his gut, he clung to the desperate hope that the test had been wrong. That night, sleep refused to come as he hunted for alternate explanations. Maybe the results were inaccurate, or perhaps there was an obscure, reversible condition at play. Anything to avoid accepting that his entire sense of fatherhood had been based on a lie. By morning, driven by anxiety and a need for confirmation, Benjamin scheduled an appointment at another clinic. A week later, he sat once more across from a specialist, nerves fraying with each passing second. The wait dragged on endlessly. When he finally received the report, he opened the envelope with shaking hands, bracing himself. Alone in that sterile office, he read the words that eliminated all doubt. There had been no mistake. He had never been fertile. The truth struck like a punch to the gut. In an instant, treasured memories surged to the surface, holding Jared for the first time, the sleepless nights of new parenthood, weekend adventures with the boys, the triumphant moment Ophelia balanced on her bike without training wheels. All once cherished moments, now shadowed by uncertainty and heartache. He found himself asking again and again, how had this gone unnoticed? How had he not seen a single clue? Lena had always been an involved mother, coordinating schedules, organizing vacations, making joint decisions with him. Their marriage had faced its share of difficulties, but never once had he suspected a betrayal this profound. Now, the foundation of everything he believed about his life trembled under the weight of doubt. Haunted by the need for certainty, Benjamin made a decision, one he didn't share with Lena or the kids. He arranged for DNA testing in secret, compelled by a need for irrefutable proof. Quietly, he collected samples from each child and then endured an agonizing wait for the results. Each day crawled by with excruciating slowness. When the envelope finally landed in his hands, Benjamin secluded himself in his home office, closed the door, silenced his phone, and sat in stillness. Sweat dampened his palms, and his pulse thundered in his ears. Part of him wanted to destroy the envelope unopened and pretend it had never arrived. But he couldn't. He had to know. He opened it with care and read the documents inside. There was no ambiguity. None of the children were biologically his. Benjamin didn't cry, nor did he shout. He simply stood motionless, staring down at the evidence, as though intense focus could somehow undo what had been revealed. Then, slowly, fury began to build inside him, not explosive, but deep and consuming, like a fire smoldering under the surface. He wanted to confront Lena, to demand the truth, but something held him back. He realized this wasn't something to be handled in anger. The gravity of it required clarity, not chaos. With methodical calm, he tucked the papers away, drew a long breath, and remained alone with his thoughts for the rest of the day. That evening, he returned home as if nothing had changed. Lena served dinner. The kids talked about school, their weekend plans, and video games. Everything appeared normal. But for Benjamin, everything had changed. Outwardly, he maintained the same calm presence. Inwardly, he was unraveling, surrounded by the life he had built, now feeling like a stranger within it. For the first time, he looked at the woman beside him and wondered who she truly was, the woman he had loved, shared a bed with, trusted implicitly. In the days that followed, Benjamin carried the truth silently, a burden that pressed heavier with each passing moment. Every glance at Lena was filled with unspoken sorrow. Her familiar gestures, gentle smiles, thoughtful touches, casual chatter, cut him more deeply now. At night, when she nestled close in sleep, unaware of the invisible chasm growing between them, he nearly spoke up, nearly shattered the silence. But he didn't. Not out of fear, but because he needed more than just facts. He needed perspective. He needed to understand whether his life had been a lie, or if, in some way, the love, the joy, and the years they had shared had been real, despite everything. Benjamin's decision to finally confront her wasn't a burst of emotion. It was the slow result of pain that had quietly built up over time. It took shape one ordinary afternoon. He sat across the room, silently watching as she chatted on the phone, her laughter light and effortless, untouched by the silent weight that had been pressing on him for so long. That's when he understood. He couldn't keep it in any longer. When she hung up, he asked if they could talk. His voice was steady, devoid of theatrics. He wasn't angry. He just needed answers. Meeting her gaze, he told her what he knew. The children weren't his. He had discovered the truth, and the silence between them could no longer shield the weight of the lie. He had imagined many outcomes, but what came next caught him off guard. Lena didn't react with shock or panic. Her face was unreadable. She folded her arms and inhaled slowly, then calmly admitted it. Yes, the children were not his by blood. With no hesitation, she confessed that she had been unfaithful not long after they were married. His name was Miles Warren. The sound of it hit like a blow. Benjamin didn't need to ask who, he already knew. Miles had always hovered at the edge of their lives, familiar, but never close enough to arouse concern. Just enough to blend into the background of a few work-related anecdotes Lena had shared over the years. Benjamin said nothing. He let the stillness speak, waiting as she continued. She explained how their early efforts to conceive had ended in repeated failure and how the strain had slowly taken hold of her. At first, she thought it was her fault. She spent countless nights questioning her worth, feeling broken, longing for the child she couldn't have. But with time, her doubts turned toward Benjamin. Even though he always tried to reassure her, they only needed time. As the months turned to years, her fear deepened, twisting into a quiet desperation. One day, without fully thinking it through, she acted on it. In her mind, it wasn't betrayal. It was a solution. A way to bring into their lives what they had both wished for. Looking straight at him, she insisted she had done it for their future. She had wanted children in their home. She wanted to be a mother, to build the life they had envisioned. And she genuinely believed that if he never knew the truth, no one would be hurt. That's why she chose Miles. When she became pregnant, she convinced herself it had been the right decision. Her voice remained composed, her tone clinical, like someone reciting a well-rehearsed explanation. To her, it all made sense. To Benjamin, every word felt like a deeper wound. What tore at him wasn't just the infidelity. It was the years of pretending, the way she had masked the truth behind gestures of affection, shaping a life together while hiding something so essential. He sat there, frozen, struggling to absorb the scope of it all. The woman he had trusted, the woman he believed he knew, now felt like a stranger. What hurt most was her lack of remorse. She didn't even see it as a betrayal. She saw it as something she had done for them, as if the lie had been a shield rather than a fracture. Benjamin remained speechless. He looked at her, stunned by the enormity of what she had hidden, how the children he had cherished, raised, and loved were the result of a secret she had kept for decades, now offered to him like a long overdue truth instead of a confession. Lena kept going, explaining that her relationship with Miles had eventually fizzled out. They had stopped seeing each other completely, but even then, she never once considered telling Benjamin. She had assumed he would spend the rest of his life believing he was their father, and had he never found out, she believed there was no reason for anything to change. In that moment, something inside Benjamin broke permanently. The foundation of their marriage was gone. He could no longer see Lena as the partner who had shared his life, but as someone who had made a calculated choice to mislead him year after year. The trust they had built together was now in ruins. He stood up and left the room, numb, drifting without direction. He wandered through the house, searching for a place to breathe. But each space felt altered. Once familiar rooms now seemed to close in around him, hollow and false, shaped by years of unspoken deceit. By the next morning, after a long night of restless thought, Benjamin called a lawyer. He wasn't seeking vengeance. What he needed was something real, clarity, maybe even justice. He laid out everything he had learned. That's when he first heard the term parental fraud. The legal path ahead would be complicated, messy, and full of difficult decisions, but it offered a way to not only end the marriage, but also legally sever ties to the children he had raised under false pretenses. At that moment, his decision became final. He refused to keep living a false life. He instructed the attorney to file for divorce and begin the legal process to challenge his paternity. There was no turning back now, no second-guessing or hope for reconciliation. And as the legal wheels turned, Benjamin found himself trapped in a new kind of agony, the unbearable act of continuing to live under the same roof. He still had to sit at the breakfast table, offer polite conversation, and play the part of a father, while silently preparing to leave it all behind. Every interaction became a performance, a strained attempt at normalcy while waiting for the moment he could finally walk away. In the evenings, Lena remained unchanged. She followed her routines, managed the household, helped with the kids' homework, and spoke casually about upcoming vacations, as if the truth she had revealed just days earlier had never been spoken at all. Benjamin sat in silence, watching her, a mix of bitterness and sorrow roiling beneath his calm exterior. But through the chaos of emotion, one thought towered over all others, the searing memory of every moment he had truly believed he was their father. He could still feel the weight of baby Jared in his arms for the first time, that overwhelming cocktail of fear and wonder. He remembered the countless nights spent beside Elias, keeping vigil through fevers and nightmares. And Ophelia, the pride that surged in him as she walked across the stage to accept her diploma, a milestone he had once thought belonged to both of them. Now, it all felt orchestrated, a beautifully acted lie, with him cast in a role he had never knowingly agreed to. And yet, he refused to be consumed by the betrayal. Instead, he steeled himself to tear down the illusion and begin again, regardless of the price he'd have to pay for abandoning what he once held as absolute truth. As the legal machinery creaked into motion, Benjamin prepared himself for a chapter that promised to be even more painful than the last. The courtroom would be more than just the site of a divorce. It would be a stage for revelations, where masks would finally fall and false smiles would no longer shield the truth. Lena would have to let go of the carefully maintained image of a perfect life, and Benjamin, at long last, would stand up to reclaim a truth that belonged solely to him. Every legal form he signed, every motion filed, was another step down a road he could never retrace, a path pulling him away from the only version of family he had ever known. He left the house not long after submitting the final set of papers to his lawyer, taking with him only what he truly needed. He walked away from the furniture, the photographs, the tokens of a shared life, all now tainted with the knowledge that they had been built on deception. His attorney compiled the evidence, DNA analyses, medical files, and a formal petition that laid out each fact with precision. The accusation could not have been more direct. Lena had committed paternity fraud. Benjamin wasn't just asking for a divorce. He wanted his name legally stripped from the birth certificates of all 3 children. When Lena received the official summons, her reaction was cold and emotionless, the same detached tone she'd used when she admitted the truth. She didn't beg for forgiveness, didn't deny the charges, and didn't attempt to make amends. Instead, she dismissed his reaction as excessive, claiming they'd shared a good life and that the children had always felt loved. He was floored by her ability to reduce everything, the years, the bond, the pain, to nothing more than surface-level optics. Her concern seemed more rooted in appearances and community whispers than in the wreckage her deception had caused. As the court date neared, the tension thickened, each passing day more weighted with the enormity of what lay ahead. When the hearing commenced, the judge sat impassive, unreadable. Benjamin's lawyer presented the evidence with deliberate clarity, dismantling Lena's story piece by piece. Under scrutiny, she finally named the children's biological father, Miles Warren. She tried to downplay it, calling it a mistake from the past, but her version of events quickly collapsed beneath the overwhelming proof that Benjamin's team had brought forward. The truth, that Miles was the biological father of all 3 children, hit the courtroom like a lightning strike. The revelation didn't stay contained within those walls. It swept through their community with stunning speed, and it wasn't long before Miles's wife heard the news. Believing she had married a loyal man, she took immediate action, filing for divorce and expelling him from their home the moment the affair was confirmed. The fallout didn't stop there. Miles's employer, governed by strict ethical standards, acted swiftly. His conduct breached company policy, and he was fired without the chance to appeal. Within a matter of days, Miles's life imploded, his marriage, his job, and his social standing disintegrating beneath the truth he had buried for years. Lena's world began to collapse soon after. What began as whispers turned into full-blown scandal. Social media fanned the flames, and soon Lena found herself alone, avoided by friends who once claimed loyalty. Her workplace became hostile, not because of formal action, but due to the unbearable shift in atmosphere. Eventually, she resigned. The judge's verdict was swift and unambiguous. Benjamin's request was granted in full. His name was legally removed from the children's records, replaced by Miles's. In addition, the court ordered Lena to pay a substantial fine for emotional damages and cover the entirety of the legal costs, acknowledging the profound psychological harm her actions had caused. Though she avoided jail time, the financial and legal consequences were staggering, a formal condemnation of the lie she had lived. Outside the courthouse, Benjamin paused and inhaled deeply, as if trying to take in the air of a life unshackled by deceit. But even freedom bore its own pain. No ruling could erase the memories, birthdays, vacations, the simple joy of bedtime stories. The ache remained, softer but no less present, a dull echo of everything he'd lost. In the days that followed, Benjamin tried to forge a new routine, but each moment felt hollow, stripped of the familiarity he once took for granted. The children remained with Lena, confused and hurt by their father's absence, struggling to make sense of the growing silence between them. Then one day, Jared, the eldest, appeared at Benjamin's door, unannounced. They stood facing each other, words failing them as a heavy silence filled the space. Eventually they went inside, sitting across from one another. Jared's voice was unsteady as he asked the question that had weighed on him for weeks. Were the rumors true? Benjamin didn't shield him. He laid everything bare, the test results, the court proceedings, the final judgment. Jared listened without interruption, the truth landing blow after blow. He didn't cry or lash out. He simply sat still, absorbing it all. When the explanation was finished, he asked just one thing. What happens now? Benjamin looked Jared in the eye and told him that, no matter what truths had come to light, he would always see him as his son. Their connection, he explained, wasn't defined by blood. It ran deeper than genetics. Still, in that moment, Benjamin admitted he needed time alone, space to regain his emotional balance. Jared didn't argue. He just sat there, taking it all in. Before he left, he quietly told Benjamin that, regardless of what had happened, he would keep coming by whenever he could. And true to his word, he did. He showed up on weekends, helped out around the house, and slowly, the shape of their relationship changed. They were no longer just father and son. They became two men, side by side, working through grief and learning how to rebuild after a shattering revelation. Elias and Ophelia chose a different path. They stayed with Lena, who convinced them that Benjamin had walked away out of coldness, not pain. She never told them the real reasons for his absence. Whether they believed her or simply needed a version of the story they could live with, they accepted it. Benjamin didn't fight their decision. He didn't force difficult conversations or ask for reunions that weren't freely offered. He understood that everyone must find their own way through loss and confusion. He held on to the hope that, in time, the truth would reveal itself, when hearts were ready to face it. What stayed with him most wasn't the betrayal or the court ruling that stripped him of his legal status. It was the love. That never left him. It wasn't diminished by paperwork or names on a birth certificate. It was a quiet, enduring love. Never loud, never boastful, but deeply ingrained. With that love, and the scars he carried, Benjamin moved forward. Each new day became a process of rediscovery. His movements were slower now, more deliberate, grounded by a deeper awareness of his own value and resilience. Then, one day, months later, a letter arrived. There was no sender listed, only his name written in a hand he hadn't seen in some time. He opened it with the same steadiness that had become his way of facing life. Inside were several handwritten pages, full of words that tried to repair something long broken. Lena wrote that she had wrestled for weeks with whether or not to reach out. She admitted he might not even read the letter, but said she felt compelled to try. She apologized. She said she had come to understand just how deeply she had hurt him, and that if she could take it back, she would. For years, she told herself that hiding the truth had protected their family from a painful reality. But now, she saw it differently. It hadn't been protection. It had been fear. She spoke of losing her job, her reputation, and the trust of her older children. Alone and stripped of excuses, she was forced to confront the damage she had done. The rejection, the silence, the judgment from those around her, it all made her reflect on who she had become. And what she wanted most, more than anything, was a chance to say sorry, to sit across from him and express genuine remorse. Benjamin read every word. He didn't rush. He didn't let anger rise. He simply took it in, like someone listening to the final chapter of a story he already knew the ending to. When he reached the last page, he stayed still, the letter resting in his hands. He wasn't sure if the words came from real regret or just an attempt to relieve her guilt. Calmly, he folded the pages and placed them back in the envelope. Then, without bitterness, he dropped it into the trash. It wasn't rejection born of hate. It was clarity. He no longer needed what she had written. He had borne the burden for long enough. He didn't respond. He didn't try to find her or offer any invitation for reconciliation. Whatever she had hoped for, whether forgiveness or peace, he knew he couldn't be the one to give it. Because for Benjamin, the most important truth he had learned wasn't about forgiving someone else. It was understanding that love, when built on falsehoods, cannot endure. He had come to see that the strongest relationships aren't the ones without cracks, but the ones rooted in honesty, even when that honesty hurts. For so long, he had clung to an ideal version of what family, love, and fatherhood should be, never realizing the foundation had already rotted away. And like any house built on lies, it eventually collapsed. But Benjamin didn't harbor hatred toward Lena. He didn't let resentment fester. What remained was a quiet resolve. Despite all that had been taken from him, he had found something far more precious, a deep, unshakable sense of self, and a clear understanding of what he was truly worth. So he kept going, not as someone shattered by betrayal, but as someone who had walked through the fire and emerged standing. He learned that it's always possible to begin again, even when what you've lost feels beyond repair. And more powerful than rebuilding the past was the strength to create something new, even if it meant starting from nothing. That was the decision he made, to keep living, without chasing answers that could no longer change the outcome, without being anchored to regret. He chose to move forward, day by day, with the quiet peace of someone who had done what was right, even when it had cost him everything he thought he had. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.